Good morning, everyone. Well, it's morning here anyway. Today I want to do a video that's very different from a lot of the other videos on my YouTube channel. And that's because this has been something that has been irking me for a really long time. And what I'm going to be doing and talking about today is spilling the tea on Christian modesty. I was pretty proud of that rhyme, to be honest. The reason that I wanted to shoot this video was because I'm a Christian. I grew up as a Christian, and there is this specific set of teachings that we get surrounding modesty and purity, and a lot of it I have just sort of waded through all the things that I've been taught over the years, and I feel that a lot of the teachings to do with Christian modesty have no basis in the Bible. I know that's controversial, but we're going to get into it, and you're going to help me come to a better understanding of this. I hope I can help you come to a better understanding on this, and together we can have a conversation that is long overdue to be needed. I'm just going to preface this whole thing by saying this is my interpretation of the Bible. I'm not claiming that I am a direct influence from God to you, and that the way that I interpret this is the way that you should interpret this. That's for your own mind to decide how you're going to look at these passages and how you're going to be convicted on this subject. So one of the videos that I was inspired is probably the wrong word there, was a Girl Defined video. In fact, a lot of their videos, they touch on modesty. I don't have a problem with what they're teaching, but the problem is the way that they're teaching it. And what they're doing is they are claiming to have the interpretation of modesty. They don't say, this is my interpretation of this passage. They just said, this is what the Bible says, and basically insinuating that if you don't follow this specific understanding of modesty, then you are sinning. That doesn't sit right with me. I'm going to start with a story, and it might seem a little bit trivial to you guys, but this will hopefully just give you a little bit of a backdrop to what it's like growing up as a Christian. If you're not a Christian, welcome. If you are a Christian, you're not welcome. No, I'm kidding, you're welcome too. Just to give you a bit of a backdrop of where I'm coming from and why I'm talking about this topic in the first place. So, growing up, there are always these sort of Christian girl magazines. I can't really remember the name of any of them, to be honest, but you could get them from places like Kurong, like Christian bookshops, that kind of thing. You could order them online, and on top of that you'd get like Christian girl Bibles, and you would get specific books written for teenagers like I Kissed Dating Goodbye. Things like that were thrown heavily into the market when I was growing up as a teenager. I don't know if it's calmed down or not because I'm no longer a teenager, but when I was growing up it was very intense, and from every single side of the Christian perspective, I guess, I was being taught that modesty meant I had to dress a very, very specific way, and why I had to dress that specific way. So let's zoom forward to when I was 16. I think it was 16. Let's zoom forward to when I was 16. I went on this camp, and I loved this camp, okay? Most of my experiences with this camp were incredibly positive. I made some amazing friends. The people there were so lovely, so kind, and I got to do some really, really cool things, step out of my comfort zone, find myself a little bit. It was a really good camp overall. When it came to modesty, I felt it like deep in my bones, and I will tell you, like, I am not a very deviant person. I like following rules. I feel comfortable following rules, and I was always sort of like the goody two-shoes growing up. But for some reason on this camp, I was just so irked by their rules around modesty. At this camp, the girls, and it was specifically girls, had to wear shorts down to their knees. We could not wear strappy tops, like we couldn't wear tank tops or anything like that. Whatever. Like, I was used to it. I'm used to going to school, used to having a dress code. It didn't bother me that much at that point. What did bother me was I knew that I would have to buy a one piece. And so I spent hours as bathing suit shopping for a one piece. And I was so excited that after hours and hours, I finally found one that I liked. Zoom forward to the camp, we finally get a day where we can go to the pool, It was so hot, guys. Like, I was up in the mainland, Sydney sort of area, and it was like 40-degree days up there. It was really, really hot. So we finally got to go to the pool, and I got my little cozy on. I was super excited. I'm like, yeah, I look cute, but it's not even bikini go me. And as soon as I step out, one of the leaders comes up to me and goes, look, I'm really sorry, but you're actually going to have to wear a t-shirt and shorts over that. And I was just like, I asked them, like, why? Like, I bought a one piece, that was what it said on the thing. They didn't give me a reason why I had to, so I don't really know. Like, I don't think I was spilling out or anything. Yeah, I was told I had to put a t-shirt on and shorts, and the thing is, I didn't bring a rashie, and I didn't bring board shorts, so I had to wear literal clothes in the pool on a 40-degree day. And the cincher on this is that all of the boys were shirtless. It was just a really frustrating, embarrassing experience. Like, I felt so embarrassed. I was so hot. It was like 40 degrees out. Now that we've started with that story, let's get into common ideas about Christian Western modesty. So what am I talking about? What is it actually? So, okay, we have to wear t-shirts over our bathers. What else is it? It's essentially to do with how much skin you show. If someone is saying that you are dressed modestly, you would assume that they're not showing much skin. Like right now, like actually. But is it though? Because it's tight. See, it can get so nitpicky. But essentially it's to do with skin. I'm actually drinking tea, this isn't a prop. It's to do with skin, and it comes from this idea that skin is sexual, essentially. This is very bizarre because it's not spoken about in the Bible. There's no place in the Bible where it says women need to cover up because their skin is too sexy, and that's what modesty is. It's just not in that context. It can apply to men, of course it can, and a lot of like evangelical Christians will go, no, women aren't the ones that just are by these standards, men also have to be by these standards. Then it's fair. But that's just not how it plays out, and it's kind of missing the point anyway. I'm not trying to make sure that men are held by the standards of modesty. I'm trying to break down this structure altogether. I want to see this structure broken down piece by piece and looked up with a magnifying glass so people can see that it's not about skin. The problem with this idea that skin is inherently sexual in our culture is that it teaches women in particular to be afraid of their bodies, because hand in hand with Christian modesty, we are taught about Christian purity. And part of that purity is staying sexually pure before you are married. What a woman may feel growing up is she is taught that her body is inherently sexual, her breasts are sexual, her curves are sexual, thighs, shoulder blades, shoulders, knees, you name it, it's been sexualized. And so already, as even a girl, like I was taught this as a young child, not even developed, not even in the slightest, like I was already being taught these things. We're taught that as soon as we sort of are developing into a woman, that we need to watch out for sexual purity, because it goes hand in hand with modesty. If we are showing too much skin, then we are perhaps leading someone else into sexual temptation, and it's just a mess. Like it is a mess. You're like constantly thinking about what you're wearing in case it might be leading someone into sexual sin. On top of that, it sexualizes young girls, and it doesn't mean to. This is a thing, like the church is just responding to the over-sexualized worldview that people have of bodies, and of female bodies in particular, and they're trying to counteract it with the exact opposite. But what happens is that both of these end up sexualizing people. Both of these end up sexualizing particularly women. So one end in the world says, you need to show off your body, you need to show off your curves, you know, that's how you win at life, that's how you get money, that's how you get attention. And then the church is saying, your body is too sexual, you need to cover it up. But both say that our bodies are sexual. And it's just got to stop. Like, it's just got to stop. There is a time and a place for the body to be sexualized. I shouldn't have to say what that time and place is, but one, it's not a child. Do not sexualize a child. And two, it's not if a woman is jumping down to the grocery store in her leggings. The other, perhaps more serious side of this modesty culture is that it teaches women to blame themselves. So there's a difference, obviously, between trying to get a guy's attention through what you're wearing and not trying, not thinking about it, maybe even specifically thinking about not getting a guy's attention and dressing accordingly. I will say that I have been approached in uniform. I've been approached in a nice dress, like going out. Been approached in jeans, and I have been approached in my ugliest sweatpants with my ugliest hoodie and my hair up in a bun. And this guy comes up to me and he goes, this is in Bunnings, by the way. Bunnings. I was in the fertilizer section. And this guy comes up to me and he's all like, you're looking really nice today. And I look at him literally like, and then he's like, oh, no, not your clothes. So in a sense, it doesn't matter what you're actually wearing. You're going to get attention anyway. It almost 100% relies on that person, whether they're going to sexualize you or not, whether they're going to think about you in a lustful way, whether they're going to approach you, touch you, even harass you. It's up to that person. It's not up to you. Clothes don't make you ask for it, okay? We need to stop thinking that it's the woman's fault for what she's wearing. Modesty culture often will make women feel so guilty about what's happened to them because they have gotten into the rhythm of blaming themselves and thinking of themselves as the temptress. And so they might not even come forward. And that's really, really scary. Another one, which I love, is how are you going to expect people to respect you if you don't respect yourself? Number one, just because I'm wearing a crop top doesn't mean I'm not respecting myself. Maybe I'm respecting that it's really hot outside. And number two, shouldn't we all respect and love each other regardless of what we're wearing? The Bible calls us to love our enemies. Surely then, if you can love your enemies, you can love someone who's wearing leggings as pants. My respect for people is because God loves me, is because I know that He created them and they're worthy of respect. They are worthy of love because God loves them. Who am I to say I can't love you, I can't respect you, when God Himself loves and respects that person? So to a degree, we can control how people are going to perceive us. If I'm wearing a big t-shirt with a massive cross on it saying I love Jesus, people can assume that I love Jesus, and I should have the foresight to be able to think, if I wear this t-shirt, people will think I love Jesus. That will be their perception of me. But at the end of the day, people will think what they want to think. They will read into what they want to read into, and we cannot, for the majority, control how people are going to perceive us. Other people are going to see you how they're going to see you. Use your brain, okay? If you go out and you are wearing something quite revealing, and yeah, you can assume that depending on your context, people are going to be tempted to look at you. We have to be conscious of the people around us, not because, you know, we're ordered to or forced to, but because we love people, right? Like, we want people to feel comfortable around us. We want to be loving towards other people. But that also goes for on the other side of the spectrum. If you walk in to a restaurant and you see a lady who is wearing something a bit more low cut and you can see her cleavage, don't judge her. Don't think in your mind like she is worth less, or she does not care about other people, or she is purposefully trying to tempt me. Like, she might have just thrown on a shirt and quickly gone down to the restaurant. We don't know, and we can't judge. Okay, one of my favorite sayings is, we should leave things to the imagination. I know how this saying is meant to get across, but just listen to the words. Just listen to what they're actually saying, because if you're leaving something to the imagination, you're still implying that someone is imagining you in the nutty. We gotta stop saying this, ladies. and men. Let's not imply that people are constantly imagining people naked, and let's not make someone feel bad or self-conscious that people are thinking of them naked. And this also perpetuates the idea that men can't control themselves. This is so demeaning. Like, guys, take your thoughts captive. You can do it. It's not out of your control. Sure, you might think, wow, she's really pretty, but then you can just look the other way and think about what you're gonna have for lunch. We need to stop being demeaning to guys and make them seem like they're just mindless sex creatures walking around looking at everything that moves. Very condescending to guys. Okay, and lastly, what I do not like about this teaching, it diverts the attention away from what the passage is actually saying to what people are wearing, how short their skirt is, and how tight their clothes are. This is a massive disservice to the Bible. This is, in my opinion, actually quite serious. We need to be reading the Bible with our brain. We need to be actually thinking about what it's saying and not just going with the culture, not just going with the flow. So, with that all said, let's actually get into the passages that talk about modesty, that are in relation to modesty, and let's interpret them. Let's have a look at them. So before we get into that, I want to go through two different terms. One is exegesis and one is eisegesis. Eisegesis is when you take your culture and your thoughts and your beliefs and you read them into a passage. You go into that passage expecting them to align with what you believe. That's eisegesis. It comes from the Greek. It means reading into something. Then we've got exegesis, which is the opposite. Ex is out, so that's taking what is in the passage and trying to get out of the passage what that passage is actually saying, who it's saying to, when it is talking to, and why. So with that being said, let's get into the most quoted passage when it comes to modesty. So this is in Timothy. It is in the first book of Timothy, and it is chapter 2, and it's verses 9 to 10. In like manner also, that the women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with propriety and moderation, not with braided hair or gold or pearls or costly clothing, but which is proper for women professing godliness with good works. Okay, so if we took the word modest there to what our culture has said modest is, then we would think, okay, women can't show skin. However, if we read it in the Greek, which is what the New Testament is written in, is in ancient Greek, Koine Greek, then we can have a different interpretation of what this is actually saying and what this is actually telling women, in particular this passage, to do. So we chuck in Cosmios. There it is right there. Boom. It says well-ordered, regular, moderate. A regular practice. And when it is talking about people, it means they're orderly, well-behaved, regular, discreet, quiet, decent. That's the word for modest in this passage. As you can see, doesn't have much to do with skin. Now this passage is taking on a bit of a different meaning, because instead of women not wearing short skirts to church, it's actually saying, women, you're professing to be godly, kind, decent, orderly, so let the outside show that. It talks about braided hair and jewelry and clothes for a reason. And this is because clothes are a form of communication. It communicates what we desire in life. It communicates what we think is good. And so if you're turning up to church adorned in really, really expensive clothes and jewelry and these elaborate braided hairstyles that they had back then that would take hours to do, you're kind of saying, this is about me. I care about how I look. You know, you're drawing attention to yourself in a place where you should be actually giving the attention to God. Now, of course, skin can be applied here. It can be, but what you cannot say is that it is talking about particularly how revealing a woman's clothes should be or not. It's just simply not there. The passage is calling us to step back and let God take over, to not be the center of attention, to not be vain, and to not show off our wealth. A little sister passage that goes in hand with that is 1 Peter 3:3, and that says, your adornment must not merely be external, braiding of the hair, wearing gold jewelry, or putting on dresses. So it's very similar. Again, talking about braids, jewelry, and dresses. So these were obviously signs of wealth back then. These were obviously things that women were kind of obsessing over, I guess, and it was becoming a problem, and so he's addressing it. It's being addressed in 2 separate passages, so it's obviously a problem in that culture. So another passage that I want to read out is Genesis 3:7 and 9-11. That makes sense. I'm like skipping a little bit there. I'm just skipping verse 8 actually. So this is when Adam and Eve are in the garden, and they were fine. Like they were made naked. God made us naked. We come into this world naked. And it says, then the eyes of both of them, this is after they've eaten the fruit, were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves coverings. Then the Lord God called to Adam and said to him, "Where are you?" And he said, "I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself." And God said, "Who told you that you were naked?" It seems to me that our embarrassment around nudity and our obsession around nudity doesn't come from God. He made us naked, so there's nothing wrong with the nude form. It's beautiful. He made us this way. God had no issue with Adam and Eve being naked, but it was Adam and Eve that had the issue. As soon as their eyes were open to evil, and they could suddenly see the ways that evil could enter into their nakedness, their shame, their vulnerability, that's when it became twisted, was at the fall. So in a perfect world, in heaven, seems like we're going to all be in the nude. I've got a few more passages and then we'll call it a day, because I know that this video is going to be really, really long. I'm really sorry about that. I've obviously got a lot to get off my chest here. Let's get into the one about lust. And I love this, and there was a little meme floating around for a while on the internet. You might have heard it. But I'm just going to read out the passage to you. And it's Matthew 5 verse 28. And it says, "But I say to you," this is Jesus talking, "I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust has already committed adultery in his heart." The heart matters. "If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out." He doesn't say go to the woman and tell her to cover up. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad idea. Again, context. But what he does say is you need to pluck your eye out. In other words, if you sin, it's on you. But in saying that, now that I've said that if you sin, it's on you, we are to take responsibility for our actions and what we decide to wear, because we can knowingly lead others into temptation. Okay, so I'm going to read a couple passages here that will sum up our response to this, our response to modesty. Mark 9:42 says, "Whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble," this is Jesus again, sorry, "it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were thrown into the sea." Jesus takes making other people sin or knowingly putting stumbling blocks in other people's way very serious. If you are egging someone on to do drugs, or if you are in some way enabling someone to fall into temptation, you are becoming a stumbling block to them, and that is actually on your head too. But we need to be really careful with how we use this passage, because a girl 15 years old who's wearing a tank top is not knowingly causing someone to stumble. So we've really got to look at intent here. It's about the heart. God looks at the heart and not at the outward appearance. This is so important. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. That's Matthew 7 verses 12. So in everything that we do, we need to think about other people. It's just part of love. It's just part of being kind to others, is going into a situation. And this is where modesty makes sense, right? Because you go into a situation, and if modesty means fitting in with your surroundings, being in harmony with your surroundings, then you need to go, okay, I'm going to church. What is going to fit in there? How am I going to make sure that I'm not standing out and that I'm not causing lots of people to look at me? When you go to the beach, you could argue that people are expecting to see people in swimsuits, and so it's okay to wear a swimsuit. You need to deliberate in your mind. You need to think about this in your mind. Lastly, I just want to read out a passage from Romans, and this is a bit longer, but I feel like it sums up things pretty well. Even though it's not technically on modesty, it's not technically on what you're wearing, it's about things like food and things like following the Sabbath. Like, it's these smaller issues that people are sort of left to grapple with themselves. This is Romans 14 verses 1 to 13. Receive one who is weak in the faith, but not to dispute over doubtful things. For one believes that he may eat all things, but he who is weak eats only vegetables. That's me. Let not him who eats despise him who does not eat, and let not him who does not eat judge him who eats, for God has received him. Who are you to judge another's servant? To his own master he stands or falls. Indeed, he will be made to stand, for God is able to make him stand. One person esteems one day above another, another esteems every day alike. Let each be fully convinced in his own mind. Own mind. He who observes the day observes it to the Lord, and he who does not observe the day to the Lord, he does not observe it. He who eats, eats to the Lord, for he gives God thanks, and he who does not eat to the Lord, he does not eat and gives God thanks. For none of us lives to himself, and no one dies to himself. For if we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. For to this end Christ died and rose and lived again, that he might be Lord of both the dead and the living. But why do you judge your brother? Or why do you show contempt for your brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. It is written, As I live, says the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue confess to God. So then each of us shall give account of himself to God. Therefore let us not judge one another any more, but rather resolve this, not to put a stumbling block or a cause to fall in our brother's way. So essentially what this passage is saying is that obviously, Paul is addressing some issues. People are a bit confused. So they've come from Judaism, and now Paul is saying that they can eat pigs and they can eat shellfish. But some people are still really uncomfortable with this. So it's talking about these eating laws, I guess, and some people are getting riled up about it, and Paul is saying, look, we all interpret things differently. Let's be convinced in our own mind and know that these issues don't actually determine our salvation. Each person is still giving thanks to the Lord. Each person is still serving the Lord to his best knowledge, and we've got to let God be the judge. I am guilty of judging people for what they're wearing. Modesty, in the way that it was taught in the Western Christian tradition, taught me to judge women who were showing too much skin or wearing leggings as pants. And this passage clearly says that we are to not judge anymore. But let's not judge people for what they've decided that the Bible doesn't really speak clearly against anyway, that can be interpreted differently anyway. Instead, if you are going to a vegetarian's house, don't eat meat there. Just be respectful of them. Just love them. Just think about your surroundings. If you are going to someone's house and you know that they're sober, don't bring alcohol. Don't put a stumbling block in front of people, but don't judge each other either. They've made that choice, you've made this choice. At the end of the day, you both still love God, and honestly, clothes should be the least of our worries. So I hope that this video has been helpful for some of you guys. I hope that I've added something new to the conversation. If you've enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe. Do note that I do more music videos on this channel than I do videos like this, but if you do like videos like this, leave a comment down below and tell me maybe a topic you would like to hear more about. Otherwise, please continue the discussion down below. I would love for you to refute what I've said. I would love for you to come up with your own biblical standpoint on something. Just keep the conversation flowing, and I love you guys, and I'll see you guys in my next video.